Let's start off with animation. Animation has been a popular medium in expressing and showing artistic skills. It has a big influence towards a lot of things. One of the most notable impacts of animation is the emotional response it can evoke in viewers. Although animation has existed for over 117 years, yes, it existed far back in the 19th century, it is still to this day improving. From 3D animations, which is one of the most common types of animation medium in our time, to using any available devices as its medium to make 2D animations. But although computers have stepped in instead of actual drawings, it's not necessarily gonna make an animator's life like a breeze. The computer is just another tool, and animation is still a long and intense process. So in this video, we're going to be learning the two most important and basic things in animation: storyboarding and implementing what you made through animation. Before we dive into the details of storyboarding, let's start off with what is animation. This will help you broaden your understanding of how animation was used in the past and why animation is improving till today. What is animation? According to Alyssa Mayo, animation has allowed storytellers to tell stories in unique ways. The visceral, fantastical worlds in animated films can reignite inspiration and the magic of stories no matter what age. But in her general definition, animation is a method of photographing successive drawings, models, or even puppets to create an illusion of movement in a sequence. Because our eyes can only retain an image for approximately 1/10 of a second, when multiple images appear in a fast succession, the brain blends them into a single moving image. In traditional animation, pictures are drawn or painted on transparent celluloid sheets to be photographed. Early cartoons are examples of this, but today, most animated movies are made with computer-generated imagery or CGI. To create the appearance of smooth motion from these drawn, painted, or computer-generated images, we have to rely on frame rate, or the number of consecutive images that are displayed each second. Moving characters are usually shot on twos, which just means one image is shown for 2 frames, totaling in at 12 drawings per second. 12 frames per second allows for motion but may look choppy. In the film, a frame rate of 24 frames per second is often used for smooth motion. There are many types of animations, which includes traditional animation, rotoscoping, 3D animation, stop motion, motion graphics, and many more. Although things can get overwhelming when it comes to animating in different types, we will be focusing particularly on traditional animation. Traditional animation is one of the oldest types of animation in film. As mentioned above, in traditional animation, objects are drawn on celluloid transparent paper. In order to create the animation sequence, the animator must draw every frame. It's the same mechanism as a flipbook, just on a grander scale. Traditional is most often 2D animation. Examples of 2D films from the US are Aladdin, The Lion King, and other earlier cartoons. In the earlier years, the animator would draw on a table that had a light inside of it, so the creator could see his or her previous animation. While the traditional style is not nearly as prevalent today, drawings are generally done on tablets. The manual coloring hasn't been used by Disney since The Little Mermaid in 1989. In other parts of the world, Japan has become a powerhouse of animation, and anime has been massively influential around the world. One of its most distinctive characteristics is that often, anime is animated on threes, which means there is a new image every 3 frames, rather than in the US, where most animation is every 2 frames. This allows Japanese animators to draw with more detail since fewer images are required. It also gives anime a distinct feel to its movements. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. Some US animation is done on 3s, and some anime is done on 2s or even 1s. Now that you got the premise of what animation is, we can dive into our first step in making animation: storyboarding. All great films, animations, TV series, and even games start with an idea, and that's where storyboard comes in. Storyboarding has been used in film production since the 1930s. helping to guide the direction and vision of a project, no matter who works on it. A storyboard looks similar to a comic strip. It's a series of pictures, drawings, or concepts illustrating critical moments in the narrative of the animation or film. It's how artists and directors get a visual sense of how a production will look. Now you know what storyboarding is, we can now move on how to make an animation storyboard. Before a storyboard can be created, the script needs to be completed. Ideally, it should be as near as final as possible, so the storyboard can represent the narrative with precise detail. Here are steps in making an animation storyboard. Number 1. Get a storyboard template. You'll create your storyboard using thumbnails, usually with 4 to 6 per page. Your template can be on paper or digitally. Number 2. Create rough sketches. Many animators like to start by drawing rough sketches of each scene before they put the work into captioning and detailing them. Number 3. Add detail in color. The storyboard animator will add details in color. It's an opportunity to notice any mistakes before the final drawings are created. And lastly, number 4. Import into your computer or tablet. Add speech bubbles, caption, and layer any additional detail needed. If your sketches were done by hand, you'd scan them into your animation device first, then add your annotations. You'll likely use Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or Procreate for this. Now that we have done the steps into making a storyboard, we can create these still images into actual moving masterpieces. On to our next topic, implementing it through animation. Animation has this thing we call the Animator's Bible, which involves the 12 principles of animation. The 12 principles of animation were introduced by 2 animators at Disney in 1981. Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas included them in their book, The Illusion of Life, Disney Animation, published that year. The book includes the 12 principles of animation. It includes squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead action and pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, slow in and slow out, arcs, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. We're going to be focusing mainly on squash and stretch, anticipation, and timing, since they are important in putting life into our animations. The squash and stretch principle is considered the most important of the 12 principles of animation. When applied, it gives your animated characters and objects the illusion of gravity, weight, mass, and flexibility. Think about how a bouncing rubber ball may react when tossed into the air. The ball stretches when it travels up and down and squishes when it hits the ground. Anticipation helps to prepare the viewer for what's about to happen. When applied, it has the effect of making the object's action more realistic. Consider how it might look if you were to jump in the air without bending your knees, or perhaps to throw a ball without first pulling your arm back. It would appear very unnatural. In the same way, animating movements without a flicker of anticipation will also make your motion seem awkward, stale, and lifeless. For this principle of animation, we need to look at the laws of physics again, and apply what we see in the natural world to our animations. In this case, the focus is on timing. If you move an object more quickly or slowly than it would naturally move in the real world, the effect won't be believable. Using the correct timing allows you to control the mood and the reaction of your characters and objects. That's not to say you can't push things a little, especially if you're creating an imaginary world, but if you do, be consistent. Applying these 3 animation principles to your animation will help you get a better idea of how things move in the real world. They follow a set of movement depending on what shape, reference, or image you are going for. Now that you got the hang of it, that's all for today. I hope you learned a lot in this video, and make sure you stay motivated when you start your animating journey. I'll see you in the next one.